Okay, so I'm just getting set up here. Looks like there's probably 4 people that I know that are on this. Just trying to pull up my LinkedIn here so I have everything in front of me, know what I'm looking at, so that we can kind of talk through some stuff. But the purpose of this, if you guys are tuning in, is to go over how we can like improve our LinkedIn profile. So as far as like a lot of the questions that I got, some of the things that it sounds like you guys wanted to focus in on were like, how do I get a job? How do I get more exposure to people like in my industry? How do I make it look good? I had some like really good questions that I think we're going to cover today, which are like, how do I make my about me a little more unique? How do I, set up my overall profile so that it stands out to somebody that is actually going to jump on my LinkedIn, potentially like help me out to find a job, and all that kind of stuff, right? So that's kind of like what we want to go over. I'm going to go over first the basic way that I feel like is a really strategic way that you can set up your LinkedIn. And then after that, I'll go through a lot of your guys' Q&A that I got. And I think I'm just going to try to go question by question on some of those comments that you guys asked. What I want to do first is to go through like the basics with everybody. And the reason for that is a lot of people had some kind of like one-off questions. I don't know how much we'll be able to get into that, such as like, how do I get a job in this specific industry? I personally work in like the Salesforce environment. So my take on like how to get a job and things may be a little bit different from somebody that is not in that same environment. But what I'm hoping is that as we go through this a little bit together, that we get some just general tips of like how we can set it up and make it a little bit better. And then I can jump into those comments for you. So I'm looking at my LinkedIn profile right now. And the first thing that I want to kind of go through with you guys is like the very first top part of it, right? Like you have your profile picture, you're going to have a header, and then you have this basic tagline underneath your name. So before we even get into any of that, the very first thing that we're going to focus in on is the picture and then your name. So when somebody is going to your profile, they're going to be looking at like the very first thing that's going to grab their attention is like the picture that you have up there. So if you don't have a profile picture, that's kind of 101. I would definitely put a picture on there. That's like your most basic thing, probably common sense. But there is a statistic out there with LinkedIn that it goes up 73% if you have a profile picture. And that's kind of obvious. Like if you're trying to find a job, people want to know who you are, what you look like, kind of like how you're portrayed in your picture, like how you're dressed, right? Like if you're going in for something that's a little more like in a professional environment, like how do you present yourself? And that's kind of their very first take on that. So very first tip would be you definitely want to put on a profile picture. And I know that's very basic, but I did see some of the people leave comments and that were interested and wanted help on this that did not have a profile picture. So I want to call that out, that you would definitely want to put a profile picture on here. The second part of that is like, if you have a profile picture, try trying to either pay somebody that you know, if you have a nice camera, even like, with your phone. I know a lot of like our phones nowadays like can take pretty good pictures. So really from that point forward, you can just set up your own backdrop in your house by just getting like, if you wanted to go really homeschool and just get like a colored sheet or paper, you could use that as a backdrop for like a color to make it fairly nice that way, and get a picture. But if I was like giving my really honest opinion, it'd be like, especially depending on where you're located, but like here in the US, right? Like you could easily find somebody on Instagram or on Facebook or whatever else that you're on social media platform and pay them, probably as little as $50, if not cheaper than that, if you wanted to go that route to just get a nice quality photo picture taken and put onto your profile picture. The second part of that real quick is I wouldn't get too hung up on like the way that you're dressed. I would also try to dress in a way that maybe you feel comfortable actually dressing. Something that I personally want to like try to break here on LinkedIn is we kind of live on this very, very professional network over there. And sometimes it gets a little too professional in my opinion. Like you're a little too buttoned up. We try to act like somebody that we're really not. When you get into work, like sure, you're going to be professional and you're going to dress professional and do your job, but at the same time, like you're still you. And I think LinkedIn, when it first started, was really just used for that. Like, and that's probably why it's taken so long for them, because they've been around for a while to actually catch up to these other social media platforms. So if I were you, I'm a little dressy in mine, but it's still something that I would probably wear to like dress up a little bit, right? Like it's still something comfortable and something that I would still wear myself and being myself. So I would take that into consideration too. So let's move on from that. Everybody knows about the profile picture. The next part is like your name. So this one's kind of a cool pro tip. I have this in a video on my YouTube channel as well. But what you're going to want to do, if we look at the URL of my name, I have it set up to say linkedin.com/Jordan Nelson Salesforce. And the way that you can actually customize that is if you go up to your little avatar and you go to your name, you should be able to get into a setting called settings and privacy. From there, you should be able to click on visibility. And then there's going to be an option to edit your public profile. And if I click that, which I'm doing right now just to make sure, yep. So when I click that, it's going to actually bring up another screen for me. And what I can look at there is actually a little header in the top right corner. And it's going to say edit your custom URL. And from there, there's a little pencil. You can edit that. And this is kind of more of like a land grab type of tactic. So if you're like a first adopter on like Instagram or on TikTok or LinkedIn for this matter, you do have the option, right, to like grab a tag name that best represents who you are. So the number one thing for everybody that asked the question of like, how do I get found? Well, if your URL is, LinkedIn user 00962, it's going to be a little more difficult to find you, just statistically speaking, when they're searching for your name. My name personally is super common, Jordan Nelson. Like there's hundreds, if not thousands, that you can easily search right off the bat. So it's fairly important for myself having a common name to put that in my URL. Because all those people that aren't changing it and taking advantage of changing up their URL, they're kind of losing out on that. They're not able to actually kind of optimize the SEO, I would say, to be found in those searches a little bit easier. So for me, putting my name and then also what I do kind of doubles my chances there of like, okay, if someone's looking for somebody in Salesforce, my name literally has Salesforce in it. So I should be picked up in that search. And then also it has my full name within that URL as well. So if somebody's looking for me on LinkedIn, better chances that way of being found. So I think that's a pretty good pro tip. It's kind of back to that land grab. If you think of it in another way, such as like, like Instagram, like if you were like jumping over to Instagram for your very first time, you want your name to be Jordan Nelson, chances are like that's going to be taken. There's no way I can get that. So this is kind of like an underutilized way that I would say that just optimizes that to be found a little bit easier. And going back to that Instagram idea, think about it when you're searching for somebody fairly famous on there, like they're most likely going to have their own specific name on there, and it makes it way easier to find them versus trying to come up with like a pseudo name for them. So there's kind of like a little pro tip there that I wanted to kind of bring to everybody's attention. That's going to obviously play into your name factor of it, of like, they're looking at your picture, then looking at your name. If they remember your name, they want to search for you later. Okay, well, then you want to obviously be found fairly quickly within the SEO. So I'd say that's a big exposure tip. Not a lot of people actually try to take advantage of that one. The next part down, though, let's hurry and quickly focus on like the tagline. And the tagline here is going to be fairly important. And this is my own personal take. I'm sure if anybody's watching this back and they're more of a LinkedIn pro than I am, I've always tried to go for like more is less on this part of it. This tagline right beneath your name, mine says Salesforce at the company I work at. And then I have YouTube blogs and podcasts just to kind of let them know this is like what I do. And I would say that more or less is fairly important there, just because this is going to pop up as we comment on things. This is going to be like the first thing that somebody reads. And what I see a lot of people do, and I don't know if it's necessarily a mistake, but it's not something I would personally do, because as a recruiter, let's look at it that way, because a lot of you guys are looking for like a job that are potentially listening to this. If you're a recruiter and I go there and you have this like brick of information that says, I do Salesforce, YouTube, I do blogs, I won this award, I'm an MVP here, this is something that I'm proud of with this, and goes on and on and on, right? I think one, like, cool, like that's sweet, but how is that recruiter really going to remember some of that information? I would say they're probably going to pick out some things that are like unique that they remember from that. Chances are they're not going to read through the entire thing. It also takes up a lot of space, gets a little obnoxious when you're commenting on things. So I think a lot of people do it out of the idea of like, oh, this is cool. Like, people are going to want to know the stuff about me, and that's probably true. But I don't really think that people actually care that much, to be honest with you, to try to read through that. So I would just really try to highlight like a couple things, maybe where you work, what you do, that you want to highlight there. And then that way it's easy to remember. They know exactly what it is that you stand for and what you want them to remember. So for me, like, I don't really care what they know about my job. Like, if you don't know what Salesforce is, it's not going to matter to you whether or not I'm a Salesforce admin, I'm a Salesforce dev, I'm a Salesforce architect. Like, none of that's really going to matter. So on mine, I just have it to say I do Salesforce. So if you're a recruiter, you see it, cool, this guy does Salesforce, let's actually click in, and then there on his profile, I can get some more information. So that's going to help clean it up, make it look a little bit nicer. Let's move on to the About Me. The About Me is also another like opinionated thing that I'm going to have here. I chose mine. Mine is a little bit different from everybody else's. I would say it's fairly unique. What I did on mine is I listed off a few things right off the bat that people maybe wouldn't know about me, in an effort to try to stand out. So you guys keep asking me, like in these comments and when you guys DM me and stuff, like, how do I stand out? How do I get more exposure? And I would say this About Me is like a really good spot for you to do that. Like, this, in my opinion, is where you can go into some more of those details. But let's step back and think about that in this way. Like, when you're scrolling on Instagram, or you're scrolling on Facebook or TikTok, or on YouTube, like, the number one thing that makes you click on something, if you think of it that way, is about the hook and the thumbnail, right? Like, the thing that's going to grab your attention, the picture that it paints for you. So your About Me, try to reverse engineer it that way. Like, don't think about it as, okay, let me get into this award that nobody's going to know about that I won at my company, and it's a unique award to this company that I'm at. I'm going to list that right off the bat, because once again, as that potential recruiter, as that potential employer, what does that mean to me? Like, I don't even know what that means. That doesn't stand out to me. It doesn't really tell me about who you are. And this section specifically is an About Me section. So it's specifically to kind of go into more depth on like what it is that this person stands for, what else they're interested in, how do I kind of get to know this person through their profile. So I kind of took advantage of that, instead of like, once again, stepping away from this whole like LinkedIn is professional and like utilizing this more of like a social media platform. I wrote some stuff that I didn't really see on a lot of other profiles that I feel like make me stand out. They're fun things to talk about. They're icebreakers. So I wrote things, like ex-rapper. I put a little car icon by it. I used to wrap cars as a business for a while. At my first like real job out of high school, I worked at a cell phone accessory store. So that's always a fun one to talk about. So I have former cell phone accessory salesman. And then I have like, I really like to travel. I think like going to visit different cultures is fun. History is cool to me. So I bobsledded down the Great Wall of China, something cool that I went and did. And I think what I'm trying to get at here, I'm not trying to delay this and make this longer than it needs to be, but what I'm getting at with that breakdown is those three things, they don't even necessarily like correlate. They're just three random things about me that I like to talk about, that are fun to talk about. They stand out. They're unique to me. I feel like you're probably not going to run across a lot of people that have those three things in common. So it's going to make me stand out. And that's kind of the whole point of About Me. And then once they've read that, that's kind of my hook, is this very first like 2-3 lines. That's the hook that I have. And what the point of that is to say, oh, okay, that's like kind of interesting. And then if you look at your profile, the very first thing that pops up is those first 4 lines. And then there's a button to say see more. So I'm hoping from that strategy is that they read that and they say, oh, that's pretty interesting, hit see more. And then once they hit the see more, that's when I can fill them in on all the rest of my professional information, since they're actually showing me that they care enough to look into this a little bit further, right? So then from there, I have, okay, well, I have a YouTube channel, I have a podcast out there, I have a blog site you can visit. And then as far as my professional credentials, this is like my certification, this is my super badges I have, these are the skills I have, these are some of the business applications I'm familiar with, and so on and so forth with that kind of stuff. So I think that's kind of the strategy I would I prefer, obviously I'm using. That's the one I would probably recommend for you guys as well. Like that is a unique, very unique way, in my opinion, to stand out and get that exposure. I had a question, I think, from Danielle, and she asked that where she wanted to network more with people in her industry, but she didn't know how to properly like display that. And I think that if you do it this way, that is a great way to do it, because it gives you a little bit about who you are. And then those people that are actually going to your profile to understand more are going to see all those credentials, gives you a lot more room to actually write about things. And I would just say make it light and fun. I have a lot of emojis here, so it kind of keeps their attention, draws their attention to different sections within here. It's not just like a big block of text. I think that's the other part that people kind of get mixed up on, is that they don't take the time to think about it of, how would I personally interact with this? I think a lot of the times we're really, really good at giving critique to other people and judging other people's stuff by saying like, yeah, I would like never click on that. That's like this huge block of text. I don't even want to read through that. That's like too much for me to even like want to read or like sift through to understand what they do. But then when it like we turn the table back to ourselves, like we're not very good at like recognizing that for ourselves. So this is kind of one of those sections where it's like I see a lot of people take up a lot of space and write probably really awesome things about yourself. But once again, it's like one full paragraph. You don't even have it broken out, and it's just text. So, you know, for me personally, if I'm looking at that, I'm not going to read it. I'm going to look at that and say, wow, that's a lot of information. I'm moving on, because nothing is calling my attention to anything specific. Nothing looks fun to read. It just looks like super professional, and you have too much information. It's kind of an overload. So you'll probably have some people read it, like if they're really, really wanting to know. But I guess what I'm trying to say here is we're trying to stand out. We're trying to do stuff different. So don't be afraid, just because this is LinkedIn, to do stuff that is different, like putting emojis on here, writing about stuff that doesn't have anything to do with work, like what I'm talking about with like traveling around, writing about funny things you once did as like a job when you were 16, right? So I think this one's really important. That's why I'm spending a lot of time on it. The last reason for that is all this information here on your profile in general, it adds to the keywords to be searched by on LinkedIn. So the more information I put in here, the better chances I have of being found for something I want to be found for. So not only do I have YouTube in my tagline up top, because I want people to know about that, but I also have my YouTube channel within the about me, right? Or I have like the skills that I possess or the business applications that I'm aware of. And that way, not only if they're searching for someone that knows Salesforce, but if they're looking for somebody that knows, I don't know, Tableau or Marketo, or that knows some stuff about D&B Hoovers or CPQ, that's all stuff that I have experience with. So I also want to be found for those keywords as well, just in case. And then they can see, oh, he does Salesforce. He popped up for the CPQ thing. Let's see what this guy actually knows as far as like his overall profile. Okay, let's move on from that. That's a really big one though. This one's super underutilized as well, that I saw on a lot of your guys' profiles. Yeah, I did take the time to DM every single one of you, like the instructions of like how I was going to do this live, how I was going to try to answer your questions. So with that being said, I actually took the time to look at almost all of your guys' profiles as well to see like what it was that I could personally point out, not just the questions you had. And that was something that came across in probably 90% of your guys's. I didn't see anything on the featured page, and myself as well. Probably didn't have this put up until like 2 months ago. And the reason for that was it's like featured. It kind of made me a little bit nervous because if you look at somebody that has a lot of like attention, somebody maybe famous that you could think of. So if we look at like Gary Vee, for example, that's like my go-to person. If I look at his, like he has cool stuff on there, in my opinion, like these cool interviews that he's done on like Good Morning America, or this really awesome thing about how he sold a company to somebody else. It's like, okay, well, I do, Salesforce. I'm just like this kid. So what am I really going to put in the featured section that people think is cool? And I think that's the biggest downfall is maybe you guys are like me where I saw that. Like I just did not know what to put. I thought it was like mainly used for that kind of stuff, as something like a really cool accomplishment you've done, but it's not. Like featured is just something you want to call their attention to more. And this isn't specifically for your profile, but it plays into this heavily. If you're not posting on LinkedIn, you really, really should. The whole reason that I wanted to take the time to do this and talk about it and help you like get the job and all that kind of stuff. Well, let's take a step back real fast and think about it that way. Like if I'm never posting on Facebook, or if I'm never posting on Instagram or any of these social media sites, like how do I expect anybody to actually come and find me, and on top of that, like want to follow me and like look at my profile and then want to interact with me on any of those social media platforms? So once again, I think we're really good at recognizing that. And then LinkedIn, because it's this professional site, like we really struggle to like think that same way. We're like, oh, well, that's, for networking. Like I have my connections. I'm connected with those people that I know from work. And it's like, that's great, but you already work there. So cool that you know them, and maybe for that one-off chance that they can introduce you to somebody later. But the point of this place is to exactly do what you said. It's to network. So if you want people to come follow you, they want you to be found, you want to get a job, you want exposure. Okay, well, if you're not posting, how in the world are people going to go and find you on there? Like it's going to be very difficult. Like you're not going to pop up for anything. Like you're just going to have a profile sitting there. And I would say that's not really a great look, right? Like it's not really showing you're active. It's not showcasing your skills. And I think people kind of get this fear of like, oh, well, I'm posting to like this network of people that know me. And it's like, yeah, you are. But at the same time, like, I guess I kind of get hung up on the fact that like people think they're getting stalked by other people. And I really don't think you are. Like you put something out there, they see it, they like it, they don't like it, they move on in their life. They're not going back to your profile consistently and being like, oh yeah, I saw, Jordan put out this post and I thought it was really stupid. Let me go back to that and actually make sure he only got like 3 likes because I really care to know that. And even if they do, okay, cool. That's more profile views for you, more people talking about you. So I don't think you can really lose. So what I utilize this feature section for were things that I am posting about that have done well. And the reason I do that is, well, it's featured and, we all want to show off that we can get likes on here and like exposure and all that kind of stuff. So I've utilized mine for that reason of like, okay, I'm going to put stuff on here that's done well. And then on top of that, I'm going to put stuff on here that kind of diversify who I am. So I put up my recent post every single time on the far left. And I do that so that if someone jumps on here and, they add me or they see me on something else, they can jump over, they'll scroll down, they see my featured section, and it's going to show them 2 things. One, that I post frequently. So that gives them more of a reason to want to follow me and make the connection, because it's like, oh, this guy puts out some good stuff that I was interested in. Obviously, I went to his profile. And on top of that, he just posted today. So he must post fairly frequently so that I could follow him and actually get some tips, or I could follow more of the content that he puts out. So one, it shows them that I'm active on here and it's worthwhile to make the connection and follow me if they're getting something out of it that way. And then 2, it's also going to boost your numbers on like engagement, interactions, things like that. Because throughout the day, as people trickle into your profile and they're looking at like what it is that you do, they're going to want to look at they'll pass by, I guess I should say, this featured section, and then they'll see like your recent post. Gives it more of like the exposure aspect of it, of instead of just relying on your feed solely, that they can actually scroll down and find you here too and be like, oh, that's a cool post. I can engage with it. I can comment. I can see the comments, and kind of go from there. So it gives it another shot, I would say, at life to get some more experience, or sorry, some more exposure to your post. So that's what I always do. The other side of it is that I always try to diversify it. So you have two options. You have a plus button and you have a pencil button. The plus button allows you to add a post, and the pencil button allows you to actually rearrange your post too. So once again, if we think back to like user experience, like what is it that you want to do to kind of break this up? And I probably should do that looking at it right now. I haven't rearranged it in a second, but what I try to do is like have like one that was just a text post, one that has an image post, one that has a text post. So it kind of breaks it up. So it's a little bit more fun to look at. But then I'm also trying to diversify it with like what I talked about. I do post about a lot of Salesforce stuff because I do Salesforce, but on my features section, you know, not everybody's probably going to want to engage with me because I do Salesforce. Like maybe somebody saw, like somebody on here, maybe somebody saw that I was talking about LinkedIn. They think that's cool. Okay, well, I don't want them to look at my feature and think, this guy just talks about Salesforce. He's not worth making the connection with. It looks like that LinkedIn thing was like a one-off chance that I saw. So I try to pepper it, I would say, with other topics that I'm currently trying to talk about, even if they didn't do well. So this one that I posted yesterday, I mean, it was a Friday. It's probably low engagement. I posted it like afternoon. So not as much engagement that you typically get on LinkedIn. People are getting ready for that weekend. So it didn't do really well in comparison to what I have. It got 35 likes I'm looking at and only one comment, and that comment was me. But I still have it on here, and because it was my most recent post and it was talking about LinkedIn as a reminder for anybody joining this live, so that we could talk about that. So that's kind of what I've done with the featured section. So if you don't have these like cool accomplishments, I guess maybe you're thinking that of like, I don't have an award or I don't have this that I could actually showcase on here. Start posting and start putting that stuff on here. That's a really easy way to just put something on featured, get more likes, get more engagement, let people know like what it is that you're talking about on here. And that's a very non-threatening way. And because, like I said, I saw 90% of your guys' profiles that I looked through did not have this on their profile. So another thing to make you stand out is to have something on here, like some posts that people can see to be like, oh, this guy has, you know, on this one, 293 likes and 440 comments. Wow. Okay. Like, what was that about? Let me click into that. What's he talking about here? You know, who is this person? And hopefully make you stand out more. Okay, before I move on to like some of the other things that I have planned here, I saw a couple questions. Okay, yeah, so Kadir, thanks, man, for putting that out there. It looks like, yeah, he's got first one's free, 39 bucks for the other one. That's awesome. So anybody in Denver, Austin, and Minneapolis, check him out. I mean, I quoted 50 bucks. I was thinking it was fairly cheap. And even if you don't think that's cheap and it's more than 50 bucks, here's the other thing to consider. You're investing in your time, you're investing in like who you are, your profile, all that kind of stuff. So if you are currently making 50 grand, you pay $100 for a headshot and that helps you get found 10 times more. Like, isn't it worth the $100 if you're going to go make 60 grand now? Like, you just made an extra 10K, right? Off $100 for your profile picture. So I don't really see too much of an excuse not to do that, in my personal opinion, just because if we're talking about like raise money, even if you made another 5K, that's worth it, in my opinion, to pay $100 for a picture, right? And he's offering 39, so awesome. Let's see, Wayne, when do we get to the experience sections? Could we go over whether you recommend using paragraphs format or checklist style? Okay, Wayne, yeah, let's get to that. Let's try to answer your question because I know you've been waiting a minute on that one. And then we'll go back up and I'll show you like kind of profile views and how we can monitor that stuff. So on the experience section here, we have several different things on my profile that I'm looking at. Like we have, you know, all my jobs that I've listed out. And that's one that's maybe up for debate that I've looked into and tried to research with other people of like, do I put all of my jobs since I was 16? Do I only do professional jobs? Do I only do jobs that I'm in the current industry for? How do I showcase that? And I don't think there's a wrong answer. I think a lot of people get this in their head that there's like rules that we have to pander to here on LinkedIn because it's a professional network, quote unquote. And I don't think there's rules. Like if you want to put something on there that you worked at a movie theater like I did when you were 16, I don't think that's bad. Like, okay, someone brings it up and they like, I don't get what they're gonna say. Like, call you out because it's weird or whatever. Like if you worked there, you worked there. And who knows if that plays into the aspect of like, oh, well, this guy has been doing, customer service since he was 16 until 20. So he's got the basics around how to talk to people. Okay, then from there, he moved on to this and this and this. If anything, too, I would say it maybe even makes you stand out a little bit more because you're going to have like these jobs on there that maybe you typically wouldn't talk about because they're kind of obsolete for what you do now. So that was a question I had. I don't think that there's a wrong answer with that. I personally don't have all of them, but I do have them from like when I was in college and on. So I have like a call center job on there that probably doesn't apply to anything that I do now, but I worked there, so I put it on there. And like I said, I don't think there's a wrong answer for that. As far as like the formatting style, yeah, Taylor said that Tricked Out Accessories set him on the path to success, and yeah, that's a big shout out right there. I mean, I know Mr. Sparky put me on the map for that call center, so definitely wanted to include those guys. The format style. Now, this is a really good question, Wayne. What I would point out, and I've pointed this out before, is if you look at your profile on a desktop because on a desktop, on mobile, when you look at it, it just shows your icon and the job title that you had, and then you actually have to click into it. So it doesn't really apply so much to mobile, but on desktop, this is what I tried to optimize for, is I did checklists personally, Wayne. And the reason I did that was because you have like 4 lines that you can utilize that they do not have to click a button that says see more. So what we've been talking about, and if you haven't caught the drift already, is like, we want to make this as simple as possible. We want to break this down as easy as we can. We don't want the person that's potentially looking at our profile to do more work than they have to. Like, you did the work of posting, or you did something interesting enough to get them to your profile. Now you don't want to lose them now that they're at your profile, right? Like, you got them all the way there. Now they can actually look at your stuff and make a decision whether you're a good candidate for a job. You don't want to lose them there. You don't want to portray yourself in a bad way. You don't want to make them do more work than they have to figure out who it is that you are. So what I did personally is I optimized this for the way that desktop works for LinkedIn, which is it shows you 4 lines of information on each job that you do. So on each job that I do, I try to summarize it in 4 interesting lines. That way they don't have to click see more. It's really simplified as reason number 2. And it gives them just a high level information of like what it is that I do. Once again, going back to that hook idea, that's what we're trying to do constantly, I would say, throughout this process. Like, we're constantly trying to hook them. If they read the about me, I want to hook them. If they look at the featured, I want to hook them. If they look at my tagline, I want to hook them. If I have my profile picture, my header, I want to hook them on that, right? So you're constantly trying to write this hook over and over and over for each section. And I think that's also what I saw looking through a lot of your guys' profiles, is like where we were losing that, is that maybe you had like a cool tagline, but then I get to the experience and it's too much information, or I don't understand it, or it's not enough information. Or I would get interested by maybe your about me, but then I don't see anything on featured. I don't see anything on your activity timeline. I don't see anything on your experience. So it's not just like one aspect that these people are looking at. And especially with like COVID and how much competition that has created with the job industry, is that you want to do everything you possibly can here and spend the time so that it does the work for you going forward. If I got to put in 30 minutes now to make sure that this is all cleaned up in the way that it should be, that's worth my time. If I can get another 5K out of it, if I can get that job that I wanted, or whatever it is, right? Whatever your goal is of getting a new job, it's worth the time to put in here to keep their attention. And that's essentially what you're doing, writing those hooks, trying to optimize things for user experience. It's all about trying to get their attention and keep their attention here. So I wrote those 4 lines, summarizes it, Wayne. It makes it really easy. They don't have to click see more. They can quickly understand what I do. Chances are, number 4, I would say, is that it's a recruiter looking at this first. The recruiter is not, in my opinion, right? Like, they're not a Salesforce expert. They were told by the Salesforce department to come and find a Salesforce guy. So they're not going to know necessarily what CPQ means. They're not going to know what marketing cloud is, or, you know, a data migration and what that includes. Like, they might have a high level idea about it because they were briefed on it. But when they get to like my experience, do they really care about these awards and all these other things that they're looking at? No, they don't. They care to have these keywords. That's what they care about, because their boss told them, I need a Salesforce guy that's certified. I need a Salesforce guy that has CPQ knowledge. I need a Salesforce guy that is familiar with Sales Cloud. Okay, cool. I'll go find that for you. And if I don't have any of those keywords in an easy to understand way for them to grab, then how do I really expect for them to want to call me and go further with those interviews? So that's what I try to do, is I just have it like really simple. Like, if you're a recruiter or somebody that has no idea what I do for a living, if you're looking at this, like, what are some easy things to stand out with, right? And then that way they're going to look at it. Okay, cool. I checked the boxes, right? As a recruiter, CPQ check, Sales Cloud check, certified checked. Okay, cool. 3 years experience checked. All right, cool. I can give this guy a call. He's advertising that he has everything here. Let's figure out what he can do from there. And that's kind of the way that I would go about that. And just kind of try to think of it that way. Do not look at your profile as like a selfish way to navigate this and do it for yourself. Try to look at it as like your audience. Like, cool, you think your profile is good, but what does your audience think? Because yeah, you're writing your profile to like brag about yourself and like showcase what you do. But like, if the recruiter doesn't know what you do, or it's too hard for him to understand what you do, or the potential employer, then did it really work? No, it didn't. Like, this is all to just sell yourself. This is just like an advertisement page that you're putting out. So think of it that way. Think of it less of like, oh, this is to make me look good, and oh, this was cool that I did, I'm going to write this down. Like, if someone else that doesn't know what I do for a living does not care, it's not that much, like, I guess I should say, it's not really worth your time to put that in there. Just keep it at a very high level. If they were briefed on who to hire, what are the keywords they would be looking for? Why would that be important for them to know? Maybe think of it that way every time you write that line, Wayne, is like, if you write something out in your experience, try to think back of like, would a recruiter looking to hire me care about what I just wrote? Yes or no? So those are all really good questions, and that helps us cover a lot of this experience page side of it. Okay. I was going to go over with you guys just some of like the profile view stuff. I don't really want to spend a ton of time here because it's going to be kind of subjective to like who we are. But it is good to look at. I don't know if people are paying for their kind of stuff on here, but it would be really good to look at as far as like insights and kind of see how you're trending. That helps you understand of like, am I getting people's attention? Am I keeping their attention? Am I posting enough to get traction? So this kind of plays in more for just like, am I doing the things needed to get more attention on this platform? You can see here, I have 2 drops. I have like a drop coming this week, and I had a drop like around August 22nd. Other than that, I've been really consistent. The 2 drops for me are times that are just going to get in the way. Like, one, I went on vacation. I didn't get on here for like 2 weeks. I didn't want to. I got a new job. I didn't post anything, didn't talk to anybody on here for 2 weeks. So I had a drop on like my profile views. I have another one coming this week. And the reason being is I didn't really post a lot this week. I'm moving. So I don't really have the time to get on here and do all this kind of stuff. So those are fine for me. I think what I'm looking at more is if, I know you guys can't really see my screen here, but I will share a screenshot afterwards so you can see what I'm referencing. But between September 5th and October 3rd, like I consistently week over week had about 500 profile views every week. And that to me is like what I care about, is that consistency, so that I can say, oh, I am posting enough, or I like posting enough at least to stay consistent with people looking at my profile, right? Especially if you're looking for a job, this is going to be super important, because if you're at like 2 profile views, you know nobody's looking at your stuff, right? So then that allows you to kind of go back to the drawing board and be like, how can I revamp some stuff? How can I get more people's attention? And that's going to go back into the side stuff that we talked about of like posting more. Are you engaging with people? Are you commenting on things? Are you liking other people's stuff? Like, you think about it that way, like do what people aren't doing on the platform. That's like the whole game, right? Like if nobody comments on something, less people comment than they like. Tons of people like. Me personally, I don't look through who liked all my stuff. That's way too many people, and on a lot of posts that I put out there. Even if it's 30, I don't really look through people that liked it. I always look through people who commented, because I comment back to them to try to drive more engagement. So that's like a good idea if you're not willing to like start posting right off the bat, or it's still a little bit risky for you. I would definitely start off, and this is like a big shout out to Stephanie that I worked with at Divi, because I was in that spot. When I first wanted to start posting on LinkedIn, I was like, I don't know how to do this. And I was asking her for advice. And she had kind of proposed that idea. She's like, maybe what you could do to get your feet wet more or less is jump on here and start commenting on people's stuff. Just start liking and commenting. And that way it gives you an idea of like how to find your voice more or less, like what you want to engage with, how people are going to react with what you put out there on LinkedIn. So I would definitely start doing that. Like if you don't want to start posting, or you don't know how to start posting or what to post about, start commenting on people's stuff that you find interesting. I'm in Salesforce. That's how I first started. Okay, I don't know who does Salesforce on this platform. I don't know anyone in the Salesforce community. Who can I find on here that posts about Salesforce? I'm going to see what they post. And then I'm going to figure out how I can do something better than that or similar to that. Until then, I'm going to start commenting on things. So that's a really big one. And the insights here are just going to help you monitor whether or not you're doing a good job with that. So these 2 dips, obviously I already knew they were coming because I haven't been on here. I haven't really been as active as I should have been those 2 weeks where I had the dip. But it does give you a check to kind of see like how hard that does fall. Also, if I stop posting, right, like I'm seeing this big drop coming, it's like, man, there's a lot of people that engage with my profile and check it out just because I post. I would say if I did not post, I would no way have 4,678 profile views in the last 90 days, right? It's down literally 33% since last week is what it's showing me right now. So posting is a huge one for me to get engagement and get the right eyeballs on top of my profile over here. Like if I was looking for a job, I'm not right now, but if I was looking for a job, posting would be huge, because that's 4,000 people, almost 5,000 people in the last 90 days that potentially could have seen my stuff. How many of those people are recruiters? How many of those are decision makers? How many of those are people that work on your future team that can reference you to one of those people? So it's all about drawing that attention in, and you got to be willing to do stuff that people aren't doing. LinkedIn is a content starving platform, which is why I've personally tried to jump on it. It's not Instagram with 1 billion users. It's not Facebook with 1 billion users. It's, I think, 500 million users on it, which I know that's a lot. But at the same time, there's 500 million users on it, but that doesn't mean 500 million people are actually posting. I think it's very slim. I should look up the statistic and give it to you guys. But it's like, I want to say less than the teens as far as people actually putting content on here. So if you put content on here, you're automatically, let's say, within the top 10%, right? Like you're putting stuff out there that people aren't willing to do. That's going to make you stand out like crazy. And as you can see here, I've only been doing this since really started posting consistently since July. And I have 5,000, profile views in the last 90 days. So that's a huge one. I've also boosted like followers from, I think when I started, I had maybe around 1,200 followers, 1,200 connections, you could say. Now I'm close to 8,000, and that's same idea, like within 90 days, essentially 3-4 months. So it's really a great opportunity for people to jump on here. if you're not afraid to do so and put yourself out there and get a lot of connections fast, get a lot of attention fast. As people start to post more, which is going to happen, as people start to post more and more users come on here, it gets to be a better platform as they're introducing more features, as we see with like stories. It's going to get saturated and you're not going to have as much of a chance to make an impact as you do right now. That's why it's also super important to do this stuff, and an awesome time to do it with COVID stuff. Cool. So it's kind of the answers there. I know a couple questions were around that type of stuff. Let's hurry and review this because I said I would in my post yesterday. These ones will be quick. I'm not going to spend as much time because I want to get to Q&A. I was only planning for an hour on this. We're at 46 minutes. So I want to get to Q&A with about 10 minutes left. So I'll just spend another 4 minutes here. But as far as post views, I'm not going to kind of relabor this idea, but this has to do with the same idea of like how much attention I'm getting. Profile views are awesome. They're checking out my stuff. But how about people that don't really need to know that? Like, and my tagline, like I said, they know I do Salesforce. They know I do YouTube. They know I do blogs. They know I do podcasts, all from my tagline when I post. So there's going to also be people that aren't always going to click on your profile. They're just going to look at your post. Maybe you just see your post. And that's me for the majority of the people that I've ended up following on here is maybe the first, like, I don't know, 5 to 10 interactions. I don't usually look at their profile. I see something, maybe it was cool to me the one time. I'm not going to go try to check them out and follow them. If I see them, 5 to 10 times of something that they posted that I liked, then I go over to their profile, check it out, see if they're worthwhile to follow. So post insights are also a really cool one. I want to get into that no lose mentality one more time, because going back to your guys' question, trying to answer that question and like come up with every scenario I could of how to help you get a job in your own industry, posting is the biggest one outside of like how to model your profile here. That's cool and big. But even if you had a crappy profile, in my opinion, and you spent the time to post, I think that you could draw more attention that way. And an example of that no lose mentality, in my opinion, is like yesterday. I knew, being a Friday afternoon and not really posting at all this week or answering my DMs as much as I usually do, I knew that it wasn't going to get a lot of traction. And the first thought that always goes in my head, and I'm sure a lot of other people's, is, should I post it? It's not going to get as much attention as I want it to. And for the example here that I'm looking at is my one yesterday didn't do as well in comparison. It got 35 likes, 1 comment, which was my own comment, like I said. It still got 1,845 views. That's still 1,800, almost 2,000 people that saw that could potentially be like, oh, this guy does Salesforce. We want to hire a Salesforce guy and do it, right? So huge that way is that even if you're putting out stuff that you don't think people care about or engage with, right? I still got 2,000 people to look at it, which brings me more opportunity to get to that. And then for the contrast to that, something that really does well for myself, this is the best post I've ever had for reference, was just the one talking about doing this seminar. And the reason that it did so well is because it had so many comments on it, so much engagement. And that one got 34,916 views as of today. Those have still been trickling in because it's just a week old. So potentially hit, 35, 36,000 views. That's insane. And that's like the reason why LinkedIn, in comparison to places like Facebook and Instagram, where they're so saturated, why this place is so awesome to take advantage of as far as posting goes. Because I don't have anything close to 35,000 views, but the way that this works is that when someone likes something, you may have seen this on your own timeline. When someone likes something on this platform, it appears on your timeline and it will say, Jordan Nelson liked this post or found this post interesting, right? And it pops up, even though you had no interaction with it, it pops up and then gives me the chance to engage with it. And that goes up even more so when people comment on it. So that's why I personally, there's 2 reasons. Like, one, I care enough to like talk back to people who cared to comment on my stuff, because for me, like I'm just talking about whatever. So I think it's cool that people are like willing to comment on it. But 2, is to take advantage of the algorithm and make sure that that gets more engagement, more opportunities for people to see this. So with 440 comments and almost 300 likes, 35,000 views, that helped because all those people liking it and commenting on it, other people saw it that I was not connected with. I made so many connections off of this, and was able to get a lot of people in my network that are really awesome to have in my network as far as like what I do for a living. So that was really cool that way as well. So that's a huge one, is you just have this like uncapped potential right now. Who knows when this changes as far as their algorithm goes. But as of right now, that's favored because, like I said, they don't have a ton of people creating content on here yet. And so this feature as part of their algorithm helps drive more content is what it looks like on your feed. They don't ever want your feed to be empty, right? So if you follow 200 people and they never post, well, then what are you ever going to see like on your feed, right? So if you're liking stuff, if you're commenting on stuff, they have that appear on other people's posts so that there's always stuff to go around. So a lot of potential there, a lot of posting there. Okay, I'm a little bit over on my time here, but I think we covered the majority of the stuff that I felt was important for you guys. I don't really have a ton of questions here. It looks like, I think I answered the one from Wayne. What kind of content do you recommend posting for new Salesforce users? So that one's from Rena. This is a good question, especially because I do Salesforce for a living. I was in the same boat. So Rena, when I first started, I was the same way. I was like, what do I know? I got one certification. I've been doing this for a couple of years. And then you look at people out there in the Salesforce ecosystem that are like David Liu and all these other awesome MVPs that are out there. And I think that gets a little intimidating because they've done so much for the community. They contribute a lot. And I personally took it as like what's really interesting for people to know. Maybe I only know how to like reset passwords. Going back though to this whole idea, I would first think of like, for you, Rena, like what is your goal that you want to have? Because there's probably two answers to the question. Like one, are you just trying to post stuff to be helpful? That might be a different approach. Or are you trying to post stuff that is helpful that you think is, but also is going to get you attention? And I think a lot of people probably fall to number two, is like they want to be found on here. That's why they're on LinkedIn and that's why they want to post. But then they also want to put something out there that's like worthwhile. And that was kind of myself. Like I fell towards number two. And what I've realized is that one, there's not a lot of people posting on here. And then two, Salesforce specifically, like you could probably think back to like the days when you first started in Salesforce, how much content could you actually find that was useful on YouTube or on these different social media sites or communities to get answers? And for me now, I'm like full on board. People have asked me this question like at work and stuff. And it's like, if they're even a junior admin, I'm like, literally go on LinkedIn and start posting about how to reset passwords, because people don't take the time to really put it out there. They assume it's common knowledge. They don't do it in a fun, creative way. But if I was very brand new, like if there's thousands and thousands of jobs every year that we see in Salesforce being created. So that means there's thousands and thousands of people that are going to be brand new. And so for somebody, that's going to be useful, especially because it's not out there. So if you're brand new, Rena, even if you just only know how to reset users, still worth the time to post it on there. I would say you don't need to go crazy, especially if you're first starting off, but ideally it'd be nice to have like a YouTube channel, something that they could reference with all this cool knowledge that you know now, and start thinking back to those things. I think some people get too caught up that it has to be too technical, that I have to post about Apex, or I have to post about flows, or I have to post about stuff that maybe I don't really know yet. That's not the case. I think there's a lot of people out there just looking for content in Salesforce, generally speaking, people that can present it in a good way. I would take Salesforce Hulk. If you don't know who he is, he's a big guy on YouTube with like 32,000 subscribers. He does anything in between. He does technical stuff, but he does really basic stuff, and they have thousands of views on there. And I would say the reason is he approaches it in a pretty fun way. He presents it in a very clear way for you to understand, draws it out visually. And that stands out against the crowd. It's not just like a block of information in the community. It's like something that is actually tangible that you can go and listen to and understand. So I would start there. Thanks for the advice, suggestions so far. Yeah, you're welcome, Wayne. Kadir, yeah, you're welcome. G, yeah, no problem. I don't know if anybody else has any questions. I'm going to hurry in with the remaining time. We got 5 minutes. Feel free to. Yeah, you're welcome, Rena. Did that answer your question, by the way? Like, does that help kind of give you some ideas around how you can start posting there? Or is there something you want me to go into a little more? We still have about 5 minutes. If not, I'm just going to jump into some of the comments that I had on that post and try to answer some of those. Okay, I'll take that as a no. So there were 64 comments on here. Let me just try to read through some of these in the 5 minutes we got. Okay, this one was from Shivani. How do I become the #1 applicant for a job? I think we hammered that definitely in this section. Shivani, if you're here or not, hopefully this is something you're watching back at this point, so I answered your question. But I think that just goes back to posting, modeling up your profile. I think we did a fairly good job of answering that question for you. Ankit, this one was, how do I get a first job in the Salesforce ecosystem, even after getting certified with all my first POC recruiters with only 1 to 2 years of experience for an entry-level position? I think we answered that one as well. This just goes back to modeling your profile, I would say, Ankit, and trying to post more often. That's going to make you stand out against the crowd when it comes to trying to be found. Try to do stuff that is different on this platform than everybody else. Rena, yeah, it does. I see a lot of stuff to repost, but not sure if that's a good idea. Okay, yeah, that's a good question. Can Rena answer that? I would say reposting is fine. Generally speaking, reposting does far less as far as exposure goes. This isn't like a brag thing or whatever, but as an example, there's people that like I'll have a post that does really well for myself, and preferably, I would just rather them get on and comment on my post and like it, because that's going to drive more engagement for myself and get more eyes on it. But occasionally someone will actually get on there and repost it. And what that does, I would say, is it kind of takes away from like my own post going further than I think it would if they just liked and commented on it so that their own viewers could see it. They'll repost it. And I would just say, like, as far as attention maybe goes, me personally, I never really interact with reposts. And I think a lot of the people do the exact same, because I'll look back at these reposts on posts that I've done really well. They'll repost it for me, which I'm grateful for. And it gets like 1 to 2 likes. So you could definitely do that if you want. But I don't think it's really going to drive the engagement that you're looking for. I get it, because it's kind of like that Twitter mentality of like a retweet. But I feel like it works different on this platform than it would like on Twitter. Like Twitter, I feel like retweets are fine. People interact with them. It also doesn't like, I know you can like retweet with like a comment and it does it this way. But like here on LinkedIn, typically it's always going to look like you retweeted with a comment. And I think takes away from like the aesthetics of it and just like how like the user interface works with it and like how people personally want to interact with that versus just seeing like an original post. So I personally would really try, Rena, like if I were you, to just focus on what can I talk about that's maybe basic, but I know how to do it really well, or it's something I wish I would have known that I couldn't find. I tried to approach it that way of like, I waited a while, obviously, to start posting here. So I knew more technical stuff at that point, but a big one for me was like flows in Salesforce. I didn't feel like there were really any good flow videos out there. And that was extremely hard for me when I was trying to learn flows in Salesforce, because I couldn't find the information. So I decided to take it upon myself to be like, okay, I'm going to present this in a very basic way and try to put that content out there. And hopefully that's useful for people. So maybe try to reverse engineer it as well and be like, what was a struggle for me when I first started in Salesforce? And what can I put out there to the community? And reality is, like we said, like even if it's just a one person, you're now different. So I would approach it that way for sure. Let's see. I thought I saw another one come in here. Yeah, it does. See a lot. Okay. Wayne, Rena, reposting can be helpful if you've thoughts or commentary about what you're posting. Yeah, I think that's fair, Wayne. I just go back to like what I said. I don't think that it drives the engagement that you're probably looking for there. So just keep that in mind. Feel free to comment if anybody else is still listening with the 15 people that I've consistently had on here. Appreciate it. Thanks for tuning into the live stream so far. I'm really not trying to take too much longer here. I've spent a couple minutes longer than I wanted on some areas, so I'm going to try to crank through a couple of these questions. Feel free to comment on there, though, if you guys have anything. I think there was a couple others I wanted to try to answer before we end. What can I have? What can I do? Sorry, this one's from Easton. What can I do to have my profile stand out more from those recruiting and those that just want to see my profile in general? Good question. Like, how do I get recruiters' eyes on it? Two-part question. One part is have the keywords in your profile that are going to drive those recruiters to your profile. So on your guys' profile, anybody, doesn't matter if you pay or not, you can go to your profile and there's a section that says how many times you appeared in the search results. Mine is like, I don't know, I think 348 this week. So it's gone up. When I first started, it was like nothing. It was like 10, 20, right? Like it was never really appearing. And what that will help you gauge, Easton, is two things. One, are you being found for the keywords you want to be found for a job? Like I've had sometimes where I didn't have my profile intact and I was being searched and found under searches for stuff I didn't even do, like office administrator, because I had administrator in my name. I was actually being found for office administrator. And then I started getting found for like executive assistant jobs. And I was like, I don't do any of that. So I obviously got to reorganize some things on my profile. So that will give you a gauge, Easton, of like how you can actually be found on keywords and adjust there. So that's a big one. But the second part, I would say, you're not going to know who's looking at your profile. And try to think of it this way, which is when someone posts on here, who's actually hiring who? Like, is it the recruiter that is only going to do the hiring? No. Like, you have referrals, you have people that know you, there's people in the industry that could refer you. If I put up my stuff like right now that I was open for a job, I would hope that it wouldn't just be recruiters helping me find that job. It would be people that have engaged with my comment. Let's say I put a post out there that says, hey guys, looking for a new job, or I lost my job. I would hope that the 8,000 followers that I have now like that comment on it, refer it to their employer and say, this dude knows what he's talking about, or this is what he's good at, he would fit, and pass that along to a recruiter. So yeah, you want recruiters, but at the same time, it's kind of that word of mouth type of idea. Like, I don't think you just need a recruiter to look at it to get a job. Like, it could just be literally somebody that works at that company that's a sales rep and you're a Salesforce guy, or you're an engineer, or you're a marketing guy. But they know they are looking for marketers. They know that you post a lot about marketing. They're just sales guys, but they've seen it. They could refer that over to their recruiter or their hiring manager or whatever to help you get a job. So that'd be the second part of my question is you're not going to know. So I would just post. What's another one on here? I think you guys commented. Going back to earlier regarding content, a friend at Microsoft said that most users only know about 2 to 5% of features in Excel, but everybody knows a different 2 to 5%. Okay. If you think of Salesforce, or you think of your industry the same way, that can help. You think of things to write about for content. Okay, yeah. So really good suggestion there. I totally agree. It's the same idea, and especially with going off of like what Wayne has said, there is so much information in Salesforce. Like, it's such a like monster to be able to like know every little asset of it. Especially with all the different clouds that you have, all the different features. They're always rolling out new features in these like new releases that they have. So I see a lot of people, even Rena, take advantage of that. Like, I will see some people that I follow and they don't post often, but when they post, it's literally just about like the new release. So like winter 21 coming up, they're just like, okay, here's what to expect in winter 21. Here's some cool features. Here's how you can utilize this. This is what to prepare for. Here's some security stuff. So there's just unlimited, honestly, unlimited things to post about. And going on this same thing, Rena, is that you're also like an individual. Like, you're not just tied to Salesforce. So that's the other thing. I get this is like a job place and maybe you want to be found for Salesforce, so post about it. But at the same time, like, you're also yourself. You got hobbies, you got other things you're good at, other things that are interesting to you that you want to talk about. And that's been my big thing right now is like, I personally enjoy talking about cars. I like, talking about politics. I like talking about other things like that. So it's kind of like, all right, cool, I got this following, but like, as much as I like Salesforce, I don't want to post about Salesforce every single time. I don't want to feel trapped that way. So I want to start peppering like my stuff with like what I'm doing. talking about LinkedIn, talking about cars, talking about a shop that I own, talking about politics, like other things that I like that I would be interested to get people's opinion on. Let's hurry and try to get through a couple more of these. Oh, this one I did want to answer. This one I thought was pretty unique. It was different from just trying to find a job. This one from Eleanor, and she asked, do you think it helps or hurts to display the open to work banner around your profile picture? How are people perceived professionally when using it? How do recruiters, hiring managers use it? I've never personally done this one. So this one was a little hard for me to answer, Eleanor. I've never done that, even when I was like ready to look for a job. I think if you do what we have talked about so far in this session of, modifying your profile, trying to figure out like a better way to get found that way, posting often, you can utilize your network a lot more than trying to put up like the open for banner. I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing, especially if you've like, I don't know, been laid off or you lost your job or you quit your job or whatever the situation was. If your employer knows that you're now unemployed, it's probably fine to do. I don't think it's like a bad thing that people see that you're open to work, especially like with what happened this year with COVID. I saw a lot of it and I think people are really understanding of that. So no, I don't think it paints a bad picture, but I think there's a better way to do it, which is what we've talked about, talking about how to utilize like your platform a little bit better in your audience. If you do it that way, hopefully you're driving it to a point where you're just getting referred or people are looking for you or recruiters are searching you out versus like having to do so much like cold calling. So that's the way I would answer that one. That was a good question though. This one was okay. This one's from Jesus. And he said, I'd like to please know how to leverage my current experience, which is not directly in administrative work, into something appealing to prospective companies and recruiters. Going back to what we talked about, Jesus, this is the same idea. Looks like you have on your tagline here that you're a Salesforce admin and technical writer. I would just do the same thing, like outside of hard-coded skills. I think a lot of like friends of mine could like attest to this, myself included in my own experience. When I first got into Salesforce, I had no idea what Salesforce was. I had a background in like business analytics that could like play along with that, with like reporting and analytical work and stuff like that. But I didn't really know how to utilize the platform itself. So same idea of like what we've talked about. Posting about what you know, I think is a big one because it's going to showcase outside of what recruiters care about, in my opinion, is yeah, they want you to know how to do some like basic level stuff. And I think you can do that through Trailhead. I think you could do that through YouTube. I think you could do that from mentors. You could learn some soft skill or some hard skills, but they're going to care a lot about stuff that they can't really teach you on the job, which is your soft skills. How well do you communicate? Are you a team player? Are you good at understanding like, or I guess recognizing like little details in the job, stuff like that, right? And I think posting on LinkedIn is going to set you apart that way. It showcases that like, hey, I'm willing to go a step above. Like nobody in my network that I know around me right now post frequently. So in Salesforce community, for what I do, I don't really care what people's opinion is because for me personally, it's making me stand out like crazy. Like who else in this little area that I'm in posts super consistently on LinkedIn and grows a network and talks about Salesforce content and has a podcast and has a blog and has a YouTube channel? Nobody that I know. So for myself, I do all those reasons. One, to contribute to the community, but two, the selfish reason is that I want to build a personal brand and audience so that if and when things happen to like move to a new job, or like if I lost a job or whatever, or in your case, like I wanted to do something different. What if I wanted to do something different? Well, I now have this audience that I can utilize to help me get there with that kind of stuff. So that's hard to answer that. Let's see, there's some stuff about Salesforce ecosystem. Let's see. How about Sam Sedin? This one was, it's pretty obvious LinkedIn is like building a personal website or blog. There are specific elements that drive traffic to your site. It'll be nice to know what these are on LinkedIn. Okay, yeah, I think we did that. Talked about how recruiters will be driven there. Make a career shift. I wanted to talked about that. So DAX, same idea with your question. We talked about it. Yeah, your trailhead and all that kind of stuff, but I think just utilizing your profile. Answered Danielle's question. Let's see. Would appreciate to know what to do, what not to do. Okay, Sheba, yeah, we answered that for you. I went through a lot of like the best practices with your profile versus things that I think are overrated. Let's see, who else is on here? Generous resources. Yeah, we talked about that. Okay, like here's one of the very first questions I got. Should my Microsoft Word PDF resume or CV match the one that's on LinkedIn word for word? I've had that one a lot. And I don't know, maybe this plays into communities. This very last question I'm going to answer before we wrap up here. And I'm not too sure on this one, Atul. I think this will play into maybe where you're located and things like that. But for me personally, my own jobs that I've had like 3 jobs in the last 3 years, 3 new ones. And every single time that I went in there, and I also got a like kind of like a sneak peek of like when we went to hire somebody new in my same spot for the team, they pull your resume because for whatever reason we tell people to send those in, and they send in their resume. And one job specifically, they literally just printed off, like I sent in a resume and they printed off my LinkedIn and used that as my resume. So there's maybe a little tip of advice there. And then the second one, we took their resume for whatever reason, threw it to the trash basically, and then utilized their LinkedIn to prep for the interview with them. So I don't know. It's just kind of like one of those things I think that's like super old school where it's like paper that we're like literally printing off, that we live in this digital age where everything is online about me, but yet I give you a paper and like you look at it for whatever reason. I don't know. I don't think that it's really utilized as much as it is. But like I said, this could play into communities. My own personal jobs, though, to answer that for you, Tool, is that I don't think so. Like, yeah, have a resume if they need it. Don't make dumb mistakes on it and things like that. Like, still have a resume because that's what people ask for nowadays. But in my own experience is that they don't really look at the resume. They've always gone to my LinkedIn and looked at my LinkedIn to figure out if I'm a good match, what to do with it. So that's the way I would look at that one. I don't think there's any other questions here. If not, I'll wrap up. Let's see. Okay, if I download my LinkedIn profile and send across as a professional resume, yeah, I think you could. I don't think that there's anything wrong with that. I think you definitely could do that. In most cases, I'm trying to even think. I think the last time I was like looking at jobs, they even had an option for that. So if they have an option for that, definitely do that. There were a few where it was like attach resume or download or link your LinkedIn. So it was like an option sort of thing. So I always just like opted to link for my LinkedIn on those ones. I don't think it's a bad thing to send it over. It kind of depends on like how they're trying to portray it. I think sometimes like resumes and LinkedIn's profiles can be a little bit different. It is kind of dumb because they utilize looking at your LinkedIn more than the actual paper. But they sometimes like want to know some specific stuff that you can write out in text on like your resume, as opposed to trying to figure out how you're going to put that on your LinkedIn profile. So maybe think of it that way. Just kind of play it as you go. Like, what does the company want as far as the information? That may require you to still send in like this copy of paper just to say that you did. So that's the way I would approach that. But I think I got through all your questions. I literally just went through all these questions on here on my last post of what people put out there. I felt like I answered them all, tried to answer all your guys' questions here in the stream. Like I said, I think I topped out, maybe I was wrong, at 17 people, and I appreciate the 17 people tuning into this while I was live here. I'll try to do more of these in the future for everybody and try to make these a little more organized so people are more alerted of like when a time zone works for everybody and like when I'm going live and things like that, just to make it a little more accessible and I can answer a little more questions for you. But appreciate everybody tuning in. Thank you.